In a staggering act of silent defiance, over 12,000 police officers across 41 forces have effectively walked out, marking the largest policing withdrawal in modern British history, and leaving the nation in a state of blind luck. Leaked documents reveal a chilling reality. The government has allegedly pressured commanders to avoid aggressive arrests of migrant offenders to bypass political fallout, essentially forcing frontline officers to absorb 297 violent incidents and over 100 injuries without support. As emergency dispatch centres in major cities report no units available, organised gangs have seized the opportunity to launch a national experiment in lawlessness, with coordinated looting, illegal encampments and blocked motorways occurring while the streets remain undefended. The vacuum of authority has turned neighbourhoods into barricaded fortresses, yet Downing Street remains dangerously detached, issuing statements of functioning operations while internal emails warn of an imminent collapse of public order. Most explosively, further leaks suggest that Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been kept out of the public eye because he does not look strong enough to handle the crisis, raising grave questions about his health and capability as the nation's guardians abandon their posts, feeling betrayed by a political class that has left them and the public entirely vulnerable.
Hundreds of pro- and anti-immigration demonstrators have faced off in Glasgow in rival protests over asylum policy.
A total leadership vacuum has paralysed the country as the public and officials alike ask one haunting question: where is he? While Britain's streets descended into lawless chaos during a 48-hour disappearance of the Thin Blue Line, Prime Minister Keir Starmer remained hidden, with rumours swirling that advisers were shielding him due to medical incapacity or a desperate need to avoid a public gaffe. This absence triggered civil war within the departments, with some demanding military intervention, while others drafted unprecedented contingency protocols to delegate prime ministerial duties, not because of a scandal but because of a perceived inability to lead. Starmer's eventual 30-second pre-recorded statement claiming the policing system was resilient while entire regions had zero operational officers was dismissed as pure delusion by a public forced to defend themselves. Ultimately, this crisis has evolved from a policing walkout into a terrifying constitutional uncertainty. Britain can survive riots and unrest, but it cannot survive a moment where it becomes unclear if the man in charge is a prime minister or a patient.
Hundreds of people protested in London, urging the UK government to block China from building what became the largest embassy in Europe.
The fundamental question haunting the nation is no longer about policy, but about power. Who is actually running Britain? Between unelected civil servants in the Cabinet Office and image consultants stage managing a ghost-like leadership, the terrifying reality appears to be that no one is at the helm. This isn't just a breakdown of law and order. It is a psychological collapse of the British system where the fragile thread of public trust has finally snapped. From parents terrified to let their children walk home to shopkeepers shuttering their businesses at sunset as a tax for survival, a new grim reality has set in. When bus drivers require private security and neighbours whisper in fear behind closed curtains, it signals a nation that has reached a definitive conclusion. The state has abdicated its primary duty, leaving ordinary Britons to face the chilling realisation that if the police won't protect them, they are entirely on their own.
Local organizations that are assisting with migrant reception say the process has so far been pretty steady.
Leaked surveys have revealed a seismic shift in the national psyche, showing that a staggering 68% of officers feel they can no longer manage migrant-linked disorder, but the truly chilling statistic is that 61% of the public now believes the police have lost the will to even try. This isn't being viewed as a standard Labour dispute. Instead, it is seen as a state losing the vital consent of its own guardians, who now seemingly view the government's political agenda as a greater threat to their careers than criminals are to the public. The mass walkouts and the refusal of riot units to intervene suggest a police force that has reached its breaking point, abandoned by an administration that appears more terrified of offending extremist factions than it is of leaving the British people entirely undefended. While Starmer and his officials may attempt to sanitise the chaos by labelling it local unrest, the uncomfortable truth remains. While a nation can survive a rise in crime, it cannot survive a government that has effectively abdicated its duty to protect its own citizens.
crime.
So, for example, for years, us on the socially conservative right, especially if you're white and Christian and straight, you've been called a racist, a homophobe, a Nazi, etc.
The collapse of public confidence in the British state is no longer a hypothetical debate for late-night talk shows. It is a measurable, visible and unmistakably grim reality. Looking ahead, the precedent being set today suggests a terrifying trajectory where the state's monopoly on legitimate force, the very thing that defines a functional nation, simply evaporates. We are hurtling toward a fractured Britain where safety is no longer a right guaranteed by the Crown, but a luxury commodity purchased by the wealthy, or a brutal necessity enforced by local vigilantes. In this looming future, private community militias will likely rise to fill the vacuum left by a retreating constabulary, leading to the official recognition of no-go zones where UK law is effectively dead because no officer is willing to risk their life to enforce it. Ultimately, the social contract, that fundamental deal where you pay your taxes in exchange for the state keeping you safe, is being rendered null and void, leaving the individual to fend for themselves in a nation that has forgotten how to protect its own.
Now, one of the first migrants to be deported to France under the government's one-in, one-out deal has re-entered the UK on a small boat.
This 48-hour period was not just a breakdown, it was a glimpse into that future. A future where the government exists in name, only issuing press releases from a bunker while the streets run on the laws of momentum and force. So here we are, a country where 12,000 police officers walk out, a country where migrant-linked unrest spreads faster than leadership can react, and a country where Downing Street keeps insisting everything is under control. But look around you. Does any part of Britain feel under control? A government that can't reassure its citizens, a police force that no longer trusts its own chain of command, and communities forced to choose between fear and self-defence.
Now in London, one of the UK's largest right-wing demonstrations in modern times has drawn more than 100,000 people, led by anti-immigration activist Tommy Robinson.
The institutional fractures within the UK have transformed what was once a political debate into a definitive national reckoning, marking a point of no return where the state is caught in a pincer movement between a police force that can paralyse the nation through inaction and a criminal element that seizes the streets the moment authority vanishes. This crisis has exposed a government so shackled by its own ideology that it is incapable of even naming the problems it faces, let alone implementing solutions, signalling the potential unravelling of one of the world's most stable democracies. As the public witnesses this systemic failure, the question of whether Britain remains governable under Keir Starmer has moved beyond the halls of Westminster and into a grim reality where citizens must decide if they are witnessing the news or a final warning of a state in collapse. If you believe this report, cut through the noise, like and subscribe now to ensure these essential conversations continue despite attempts to silence them. Stay alert and vocal, because tonight was more than a headline, it was a glimpse into a future we must be ready to face.